It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another week's episode of Bible Today and 2G Talks on this Tuesday on the MSD on 117.8. It's so good to be able to, share this part of our faith with, everyone at home and to be able to have this moment together with the Trinity, right? We are, just into our first week of March. It's always it's always a great month, because we are exactly 2 weeks away from 316. March just brings a lot of different things, right? I don't know about for each person, like whether you have a favorite season in the month, or like in the year. And I think like generally speaking, I never really had one. I think I typically prefer cooler weather, and so I kind of liked winter. But not like wasn't really like a favorite season or anything like that, right? But like March is an important and a great month for me, and I'm glad that we have 316 in March. And also, my own birthday is in March too. And I think a lot of people don't know this, and I don't think it's something that I knew off the top of my head either. But it was only when we started doing, different things for second generation and SS that, that I think I found this out. But Rachel and I have, our birthdays one day apart from each other. Of course, I'm born many years earlier than she was. But yeah, and I found out that quite a lot of other people in Providence have the same birthday, that I do too. And so that's always very cool to be able to see, right? So March is a very great month certain parts of the year. My birthday has fallen on like Good Friday or Ash Wednesday, and those are very exciting times, right? So, it's kind of a start and a new beginning. And I think like with this week's message about evangelism, as well as last week's message too, it really kind of gets into the gear of like, okay, fine, we know that we need to take action in bold and brave and courageous ways, right? And make something happen, and make something with our lives, right? And so I think there's no a better time than spring to really think about these different various things. Yeah, and so on Bible Today, I want to share something kind of in line with those things. And, for generally speaking, I think a lot of the things that I shared aren't new, and they're not solely like endemic of Providence, right? These are things that are just like common in life and that, we see across generations. And I like to say that people in Providence, right, because we're so perceptive of the world and about all the things going on, right? Like I'm sure that we have like a decent grasp of like external things to Providence and like towards a Providence history. And so like I think these aren't necessarily anything that's new, but for both Bible Today and for 2G Talks, because it comes from the perspective of a second generation, I really hope that it's helpful for everyone when they think about like a long-term conception of providence, right? Because one of the things, and I'm very grateful that Rachel shares a lot about her family, about her life, and in line with that, right? Like a lot of this comes from things that we learn from our parents, right? That we learn directly from hearing from them, but also from growing up, like watching our parents. And that includes both good things that we've learned from our parents and also bad things, right? And so because of that, of course, we haven't lived the full extent of our parents' lives and experienced every single thing that they did or are exactly a mirror image of our parents, but we learn a lot of things there. And so there's lessons that we see from, people who've been in Providence for like over 30 years now, about like what life may be like for us when we reach that point, and what things that we should look out for, both in terms of the physical things and the spiritual things, things that we can improve on, and things that that we should do like them to do well. Because one of the things, and I think I'll put this first because this is probably a very important thing, right? And this is something that Sunsington commends like all of like the Blessed family and the JS members who are still here with us, right? That they've made it to this point. that they made it to the end, and that they overcame many hurdles and tribulations. And for us, like we look back on like 2023 and we refer that to that period of as like and refer to the challenges that we went through in that time. But the people who like our like the parents of second generation whose kids are now well into their late 20s or early 30s, like they've been around and they've witnessed many things. Right? They may witness, like the early 2000s, they experienced like 1999, and some of them have experienced even like longer than that. Right? So they've definitely made it to the end and they've reached to this point, right? So I think that that part cannot be understated. And so for us too, to be able to be successful in Providence history and make it to the end of our lives, there's something that we surely must learn from them too. And there's also other things that we should learn by seeing the things that they didn't do, or that they did do that didn't go well. Right, like, and I'll give like just a couple of quick examples so that's very clear and obvious, right? Like one of the things in Providence, something it tells us to do all of the time, like literally all the time, is to take care of our health, right? And the repercussions of that are obvious to us, like even if we're like in our late teens or 20s or 30s, like, we know that we have to take care of our health. But you only see what happens with that when you look at someone who is much older and saw how they took care of their health, right? And we have the example of Sung who, well into his 80s, right? Like he can like do all of these amazing things. But there are many people in Providence who, when they were younger, they only partially took care of their health, or they may have done, many things for their health in XYZ, but they forgot to do, ABC, right? Because of that, you can see what effect that has had on their health. And so seeing all of these things, looking forward into the future Providence, like 30 plus years from now, right? When we are their age, we want to be able to say that we did all of the right things that they did, and that we improved on some of the things that the first generation and that the older people didn't do. And so those are some of the things that I wanted to bring up today and like share some examples and to get us to think about it, right? Because the primary motivation behind this is like recently the word and of course this is always a central theme of all of the messages, but recently especially there's been a lot of word like telling us to evangelize, to work hard, because like when you actually calculate everything that you've done, you realize that it wasn't a lot, right? And there were a lot of things that you didn't actually do, right? And so I don't know what everyone's reaction is when you hear like a word that is like telling us to evangelize and to take action is, right? Like sometimes you may be like really like convicted, right? In a good way, right? Like they're like, oh yes, I should take action. Yes. And then like you, because of that, you boldly go out and, take action, right? Like bravely and boldly and courageously like Joshua. And other times you may be convicted in your heart, like, yes, I know I should take action, but for whatever reason, right, whatever you're feeling and thinking in that moment, it's challenging. But whatever the case might be, right, it dawned on me that each of us know that there's things that we want to do for Providence. And evangelism and making this history greater and bigger and better and, more prolific as we go forward into the future, that's something that I know is in the heart of each and every person, right, at all times. And we may have additional goals on top of that, like whether it's like, oh, I really want to develop this aspect of Providence. I really hope that our churches have good tech, right? Or that our process of translations are it becomes better, or that something songs become more available to us, or that we have skilled lecturers and online resources and things for Providence, right? So there's like those kind of facets of Providence that I'm sure people want to develop too. And like what the message said, even if we take action for those things, and this is true also for the things of the world too, like very often, like more times than not, you'll see that, oh, that actually you didn't do as much work as you thought you did, right? And I think like that's something that something has been really emphasizing over these last few years, and I think there's good reason for that. And it's actually really, it's such an important thing to know. And I think many people in the world they don't really recognize this, right? And then like, and people in Providence too, right? This is why I say this is not an endemic thing for Providence. This is just a matter of life thing, right? Like, by and large, most people in the world overestimate what they've done and don't clearly think about how much more that they actually need to do to fulfill what it is that they want, right? And so there's a couple of differences, right? Like how we know that like this is not the majority of people, like or like this is what the majority of people do, right? Like because the people who are actually successful, and the message talked about this on Sunday, like the people who are actually successful, the people who are billionaires in the world, the people who have done all of these crazy useful things and are the names that we think of as being like the 1% of people who've accomplished great things in the world. Those people, they don't count the number of attempts that they try to do something. They only go until they have succeeded in what they were trying to do. Right? So that's a huge difference, right? Like for us, like we may sometimes count the number of repetitions that we take. We may sometimes think about how long we've been going at something. We may think about how many times we like, reviewed or polished or worked on like, the project that we were working on. But, in terms of success comes from constantly doing it until the work is complete, right? And so this is something that we already know in Providence, and I think I'm so glad that something brought up this metric because it tells us that it's not really about like what you think and what you feel that is the most important when like you take an objective accounting and you see like how much you actually did. And sometimes maybe you did more than what you realized. So there are also times where you're hard on yourself and actually you did a lot more than you intended. And like the last analogy that I'll give before going into the break, is that like for all of us, we have to walk on this path that is straight and narrow. And some of us, in some ways, may be inclined to maybe go a little bit to the right, and others may be a little bit inclined to go a little bit to the left, right? But it doesn't matter whether your natural inclination is to go, your personality, makes it so that you're really good at this one thing, or like your personality makes it so that you're not very good at that one thing, right? Because all of us have this absolute purpose of creation that we have to fulfill, and so like all of us have the same shared standard. And and there's many examples of this, like the thing with health that I mentioned, right? All of us 30 years from now, we want to be healthy, right? And so to do that, yeah, some of us may be like really good at managing our health in one respect, right? In terms of exercising, but maybe we eat like crap, right? Or maybe we sleep at like terrible times in the day or in the night. Maybe we sleep too much. Maybe we sleep too little. Maybe we sleep at the wrong time. So all of us may be inclined to be a little bit this way or a little bit that way. But this we all have the shared objective of wanting to be healthy in 30 years time, of wanting to be healthy now, of wanting to be healthy throughout the entire duration of our life. And so for these things we really have to look at the future. We really have to obey God's laws, because his laws, his truth, and the things that we see from the man of mission and so far in Providence history, these are the things that help us accomplish that good life of being healthy, of building the ambition masterpiece in Warmongdong, and building our lives to be like that too, so that 10, 20, 30 years in the future, we will see how much of an ideal world that we've made in our lives. All right, so anyways, that's kind of the introduction for today. And with that, we'll go into the first break. And then, for the crux of Bible today, I'll be sharing, some of the things that I've realized from watching my parents and watching older people, and things that I really hope that Providence people who are young and who are like in these Western nations will really be able to see too. And like I said, it's really not new. But I think sometimes the reason why I want to get into these things are twofold. One, that like while some of it might be obvious, it's still good to like iterate specifically, like to get the words out, right? To have that like in the air instead of like just being like a vague thing that's like in the back of people's heads but they're not really thinking about. It's like with the word too, right? Everyone knows that we need to evangelize, but this week it became so clear because It's specifically said to evangelize, right? And then the second reason is that sometimes I think people who are new to Providence or are who or were evangelized, and so you're like first generation into Providence. Like there's this expectation that things are completely different now that you're in Providence, and that Providence is a completely different place from the world. And that is definitely true. But, as this week's message said, things change and things are done as much as we take action. And so if you fail to take action and if you fail to work at it, then things won't change. And the natural result and the natural thing that you'll see is like whatever is normal. And so what you see in the world too, right? So I want to make it so that people won't just be surprised by the things that happen in their life. And I know for a fact that if you're in Providence so far and that you're here listening to the MSD and you've been here so far, that I'm sure that you've experienced this to some degree, right? Either you see other members and you're like, wow, like I didn't know that people in Providence still do that, or like XYZ, right? And while I know that everyone's probably had those kind of experiences, I also know that we should actually be thinking about ourselves more than anything when it comes to that, right? Instead, like of course I brought that to attention because it's so obvious when we're looking at the plank in our brother's eyes. But as Jesus said, like we first have to fix all our faults and our flaws, right? And like 10, 20, 30 years from now, I want it to be so that there's no excuse that that will be like, wow, I thought this would just happen. I thought I'd be okay. I thought that I was fine. I thought that my health was good. I thought that I put enough effort to evangelize. I thought that I would be able to accomplish my hopes and dreams that I had, like things like that. But I didn't, right? I really want to avoid a timeline where like 10, 20, 30 years from now, those are the kind of conversation and things that we will be telling to the younger people and to the next generation. And so with that, we'll go into the first break for today, and then I'll share some stories from my family and from my time in Providence, and then hand it off to Rachel with 2G Talks. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that break. And so with that, I'll get into a couple of things. And this first example that I'll share is one that's a little bit extreme and that may not make sense. But I bring it up because I think a lot of other things that may seem reasonable are actually like this in reality too. Right? And so I remember like, and I won't name who this person is, and I am like fully sure that they don't listen to the MSD. But this for like I remember like there was a time I was speaking with a member, and they're a great friend who I've known for a very long time, and he was sharing that like because he kind of came in like the early 2000s ish, I would say, right? And so that's a very different timeline, and I'm sure people may be able to remember what their life was like in the early 2000s, and maybe some of the people who are listening to today's segment, hadn't yet come to Providence by that time, right? And after they came to Providence, and just by believing in God, like people can have some crazy kind of ideas that like if you really think about it and if you think about it now make no sense, but at the time, there was kind of this motivated reasoning, right? That, that things will turn out the way that we expect. And so this kind of this outlandish example that, I thought about was that this person said like, like when people came to Providence, like in the early 2000s, because we know that this is a place where God's purpose of creation is fulfilled, people expected that like people in Providence would never get sick, right? Or that like they would like not suffer like terminal diseases and like have things like cancer and stuff like that. Right? And when you hear that, you can kind of see where that comes from. And I'll be honest, I do think that in Providence, like generally speaking, because the word talks so much about taking care of our health, generally speaking, I'm sure the average health in Providence is better than in many other places in the world, right? Like where people aren't consciously thinking about this. But it doesn't mean that things are perfect, right? And like we know that this is the case because something is always telling us to take care of our health. He said, of course, you have to do the responsibility of praying for your health and doing the spiritual work for your health. But he also tells us to go get checked out by doctors and to go take care of our physical health. And even for he himself, even the man in mission had to take care of his own health by running and playing soccer for 10, 20 years. And like he caught tuberculosis because he was praying for people in small confined spaces. And so he had to work on taking care of his own health too. Right? And in a way, like if we think about it now, like you may be able to rationalize and know that we in Providence actually have to work even harder to take care of our health, right? Because we serve as an example of like how people in the world should live, right? And as someone who loves God absolutely, as someone who has become God's counterpart of love, we should do our best to like be healthy in front of the world and to make that as one of the things that we shine in, right? Like so that we can become that lampstand, right? That is shown on top of the hill so that all the people can see like wow, like Providence people is great. Providence people, they really take care of their health because they love God. They really do this because they absolutely believe that God loves them and that they should take care of their health so that they can live with God for the entirety of their physical lives and stuff like that, and a bunch of different other things versus like them looking at Providence people like, oh, like how come Providence people don't exercise, right? Oh, how come Providence people don't go to the hospital? How come Providence people like don't, get checked up and don't take care of their health regularly, etc., etc., etc. Right? So there's like this kind of thinking. So like looking at it now, it may make perfect sense that we should take care of our health. But like this is just one of the example of the many things where people are, in Providence just expect certain things to happen, right? And expect this to be the reality, right? And I think there's like there's a number of other things um, that really made me think that oh, we actually have to work really hard. And this is kind of like you can see this playing out in different scenarios. Like one, it definitely plays out in a generational sense, like people who came from Providence like 30 years ago versus like us today. And then people like for us, like in the Western nations, like people who came from Korea to missionize like these different various countries. and things like that. So you can see it play this out in different contexts, right? And like, for the people who are remaining with us today, and I'm sure everyone has seen this, right? Like who've been in Providence for a long time, and especially the people who ran directly with Sonsingnim, like a lot of them are pretty militant, right? And I mean militant in a good sense. Like they're very bold, right? And they're very courageous and they're very strong, like strong-hearted. I won't say strong-headed. I'll say strong-hearted, right? So they have a really strong heart. And sometimes like for us who weren't there like at the time, right? Who are like even their children, or like are just people who were or were evangelized not directly by something, but like through other people who were evangelized through something, like because we don't know what that world is like and what that timeline is like uh we don't have the same gusto at times as they did, right? And as they do. But, and like sometimes that becomes very uncomfortable. And, I think I'm at a place where it's no longer uncomfortable, but I share this because I think it's very important, right? Like sometimes, like when you address people who run directly with something, they kind of have like expectations that to the normal person doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And I'm kind of curious to know like what everyone thinks about this, like whether this is something that you've experienced. And I think there's people who are kind of at a cutoff line that like they came when they were young, and so they did run with something like maybe towards like in a time period where our parents were getting older but they were still young. Hint hint, nudge nudge, maybe this is referring to like someone like Pasha Sky. Right? Like where like yeah, you ran as a young person where something was like a little bit like getting a little bit older, right? And so when you see that, you kind of have the same mentality, right, of like the people of that generation, as well as a shared mentality of people in this current time period too, who are actively running now. And I bring this up because for me, like especially in the context of family and with my parents, it was very challenging growing up as a child watching how strong-willed, especially my mom was, right? Like my dad, like not so much. Like of course, like he had his own character, but he was so busy working that things of faith in particular weren't things that I dealt with on an everyday on a day-to-day basis with him. So it's mostly with my mom, right? So for a long time, and I'll say like for probably most of my life, right? Most of my life, and at least until I was like in my late teens, up until my 20s, I really didn't understand my mom. And this is not a new thing, right? And like I said, this is not necessarily even endemic to Providence, right? And like people in the world too, they have many of them have a hard time understanding their parents. But like the thing that I have realized after watching my parents for 27 years, and was seeing people in Providence who are from that generation, is that there's a reason for their strong character, right? And it's not just because they're old, but it's because that strength of character, that boldness and that courage and that tenacity to move forward, that's what it took to bring Providence history to this point in time. And not just Providence history at large, but in each person's life, right? For each of us too. That boldness and that courage was what it took for each person to make it to this point in their lives. And, going forward, while of course, like I said, right, like sometimes, like when I saw that as a child, I couldn't understand. And so that might mean that there are certain things that we need to fix and we need to maybe not do as they did. But in being bold and courageous, in like really understanding something and in running with our lives on the line and having that zeal for Providence, as this week's message said and the scripture says, that's something that is absolute. That's something that's not even part of like this generation or like the first 50 years of Providence. That's something that was necessary at Jesus's time. That's something that was necessary like as soon as Jesus was gone too. And something that Peter needed when he went to evangelize the 3,000 is something that Apostle Paul needed when, like, not only was he evangelizing Gentiles, but he had to convince, like, all of the other Christian leaders to admit Gentiles into their mix, right? Otherwise, this history would have ended with just the Israelites and just the Jewish people. But it was because of that courage and boldness that this history continued to grow. And the final part of this that I think really must be noted is that it's only when we're bold and courageous that we can have that heart of 선생님. And I would say that above all else, above all the other things that were mentioned today, having 선생님's heart and having the Lord's heart of being bold and courageous and being one with Jesus, that is so critical for our life of faith and to be successful in our lives, period. Right? And our lives of faith include everything. It includes success, even in terms of our careers and in terms of attaining, a certain degree of success in the world too. But it's also so important in terms of evangelism. It's important to pioneer and to start new churches. It's important for like 30 years in the future to look back and to see and to say like, wow, I did everything that I needed to do, that God wanted me to do. It's important for all of those reasons. And so I wanted to share that today. Like I said, if you really think about it, this idea, like being bold and courageous, is by no means new. This is a message that came all the way from Joshua's time, right? Like after Moses, right? That God said to Joshua. So it's not anything new, but it's so important. And in the same way, right? Like this is something that I've seen and I've learned by watching, my parents and people who came to Providence like 30 years ago. And it's something that I hope all of the people who are running today will be able to see and realize and apply and adopt for themselves. And so like those are the things for Bible today, and to just kind of wrap up, like these were some of the reflections from seeing how our parents live and thinking about what it is that we need for the future. Right. And so I really hope that, in some sense that this was helpful for you guys. And I would love to hear what you guys think and what your experience in Providence has been like so far. Like when you think for yourself about what you need and what, everyone in Providence needs to be successful for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, what are some of those qualities, right? Feel free to share or to, share your story down below. And so with that, we'll go into our second break for today, and then I'll hand things off to Rachel with 2G Talks.
We believe in the same God, but we are on different levels.
Put your hands in the sky if you feel alive. All the stories that we made, just you and I. Never losing all the passion. All this love is my obsession. Oh my gosh, this feeling got me heat stroke. His love like a billion pots about to heat though. I ain't never breaking from this bond, cause you and I are only one. If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? Who you with? If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? Who you with? Life. Don't worry about a thing, it's only some in life. We sing about memory stories that we share. We'll fall deeper in love as we stop and just stare. My eyes only on you, they sparkle with love. Don't forget my charm too. There will never be another. Live this life only for you. I give you this promise that I will hold true. If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? Who you with? If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? Who you with?
Different levels.
Welcome back, everyone, to 2G Talks. Rachel here. 2G Talks is a segment I hope to create a narrative around 2nd Gen's experience in Providence, while also discussing other topics related to 2nd Gen. Today's podcast is going to be a really special one because I plan to talk about the future of 2G Talks. Welcome back, everyone. Happy March. I can't believe we've already made it. Personally, for me, January and February went by so quickly. I don't know if any of you all feel the same way, but I can't believe it's already the first week of March. And for myself as a teacher, and perhaps any people that are students or also teachers listening to this podcast, we all know spring break is right around the corner. So this is the last week that I have of work, and then next week is going to be spring break, which I'm so looking forward to. I don't really have any particular plans for the spring break, to be completely honest. The last couple of years, I have been always doing something. I think 2 years ago, I went to LA because we had a United AP service, I want to say. Or perhaps that was in February. But I remember going somewhere for spring break. And then we had, last year, I believe we went to New York for spring break. So we've always just constantly been on the move. So this is the first break that I've had where I don't really have anything planned, which I'm kind of excited and looking forward to. It's been so busy. There's so many things that I would love to be able to share with you all, but I'm kind of unable to because it relates to different people, and but yeah, just because there's been so many things going on, I really am looking forward to just having a time of rest, having a time to relax, but also having a time to kind of refocus and recenter. As I'm sure a lot of you recall, I told you all that I have officially turned in my resignation letter to my job, which doesn't mean that it's that 2 weeks notice, but it's the kind of letting them know that I'm not going to be signing my contract for the next year. So I will officially be ending with my job at the end of May. So it's kind of crazy to think about. And May really is only about, at this point, 2 more months away. I have 2 more months left of work. I haven't really thought about that. It's kind of hitting me all of a sudden right now, so it's crazy to think of. But yeah, I hope everyone else's week has been going very well. I know everyone is very excited, and I'm sure also really busy preparing for 316. Like I mentioned last week, I believe a lot of our American Providence members are going to Korea for this kind of monumental landmark 316, where it's not only celebrating an important anniversary, but also an important date for Sunsenam's birthday. So yeah, many things to look forward to. I heard the planning team has been very diligent and working and organizing, and that there's going to be thousands of people going, I heard. So super incredible, super amazing. Again, unfortunately, I won't be going. But I have many amazing friends who will be going. So if you see us Americans, please say hi to them. I'm sure they would love to meet and interact with other members from across the world. Now for today, I have kind of a vague idea of what I wanted to talk about for 2G Talks. I'll be completely honest. Usually for my 2G Talks, I have everything really listed out and clear. But today I wanted to try out something different and kind of just go from the heart. So y'all let me know what you think. But there's 2 main topics that I wanted to talk about for today in general. The first one being actually an idea that my mother proposed kind of right after listening to Sam's testimony that he gave on Pastor Sky's podcast. If you don't remember, a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Sky was allowing many people to have different testimonials or that opportunity to speak on his podcast for the Days of Giving Glory, and after the retreat for the 2nd Gen, and after his kind of touring. And Sam was one of those people that did like a whole hour-long testimonial about how he left Providence and then how he came back and the things he realized. And it was just really incredible and really moving. And as Sam mentioned in his podcast, myself and my mother, Mel, were a really big part of that kind of help and encouragement and guiding Sam into the direction, not just us, but as my mother would always say, the Holy Spirit using us to help him in that way. Because as you know, as Sam said, it was through my mother that he actually learned all the lessons, did the re-education, and actually came to understand and know the doctrine of providence correctly. And so, like I said, after listening to Sam's podcast, which was incredible, by the way, I was so moved. My mother also thought it was a really good podcast and was inspired with this idea. So, the idea is for me to have almost like an interview style about how parents and second gen can interact with one another. What do I mean by this? Well, we know from if you've been listening to my 2G Talk segment or not, but I'm pretty open with my family, and so myself, I struggled quite a bit in Providence for a long time in my high school and even a little bit in my college years, and then I kind of eventually came to understand Providence and now love Providence. And then I have a younger brother who's also kind of on his own path to coming to understand Providence. And so because my mother obviously has a lot of experience and knowledge and just kind of advice that we thought would be great for people to be able to hear and that we could share, why not help each other out and testify for this history in this way. She has so many incredible stories of Sunsonim and experiences with him that she naturally applies to her relationship with me and how honest she is. And I know we probably have an interesting relationship and maybe quite different, although every single family, especially in Providence, is going to be quite different, just from different backgrounds and different environments, but we all do have the same core, and that is Providence. For some parents, their children may not be as rebellious. For other parents, they may have really rebellious children. I think my mother had a good combination of both, and so to offer that insight on second gen's mentality, because I shared a lot with her about my own mentality, to give it from a parent's point of view, I think would be really insightful for myself, but also I think for other second gen, for other members, as well as for parents too, so that they can come to understand their second gen and just create and build that relationship better, because that's what Providence is all about, right? Sunsonim always says it. He wants us to love God, love the Holy Spirit, and love each other. We have to evangelize each other, and especially second gen. Sunsonim's focus recently has been heavily on evangelism and taking care of second gen, taking care of members. So I thought that this would be a great idea, a really cool idea for me to interview her. I'm not sure how many parts, I'm not sure exactly the format or how it would work, but I think it would be really fun and really funny. Y'all could see my interactions with my mother if you haven't already gotten the opportunity to do so in real life. We're very similar people, but also very different, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Let me know if you are interested in hearing my mother's side of the story, how it was to raise second gen, her experience, her life story. The more people that we can have on this podcast testifying for this history and testifying on how to take care of second gen and how to ensure further growth for this history, I think the better. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So I know it's kind of a short one today, but I hope that it drives your intrigue and your interest, and that you all look forward to the future of 2G Talks. So with that, I'll end today. If you haven't already, please feel free to leave a like and a comment, especially if you would love to hear about this new kind of direction of 2G Talks with Mel, Pre-Pastor Mel included. We'll have to come up with a fun name. So if you have any fun names or interesting ones, feel free to leave them down below. But yes, I hope that y'all will have a great rest of your Tuesday together with the Lord. I'll see y'all next week.